You're listening to the Beast of the East, hosted by Corey Burton, myself, and Craig Ladd. We bring you all of the action from the Eastern Division. Hello, folks. Welcome in. It is the Beast of the East podcast on the Believe Podcast Network. Also coming to you live from Willis Digital Media. I'm your host, Corey Burton, as you can see from the Believe in Georgia Dogs podcast as well. And my other show here on Willis Digital Media, SEC After Dark. My Twitter handle is right above me. Joining me, as always, my co-host, Craig Ladd. You can see his Twitter handle right above him, at @DCraigLadd. Craig, how you doing on this Monday?
I'm doing well, Corey. Very excited that every week we're getting closer and closer to not only high school football, but college football.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, man, it can't get here fast enough, man, because, September 4th is the opener for a lot of people, actually for everybody. Georgia opens up with Clemson, so obviously I'm excited about that, as you could tell from directly behind me. But it's going to be a fun season. I think, with the SEC, it's always going to be a crazy season. But we are Beasts of the East, and we are live here on a Monday night. Thank you to Willis Digital Media, home of the Palmcast, home of SEC After Dark, home of Best of the West, amongst many other shows that if you listen to the Palmcast, or follow the Positively Ole Miss on social media, you would know the schedule. But we're kicking things off here on the Beast of the East. We've got a lot to talk about, but of course, we are brought to you by Bet Online. We are presented by betonline.ag. July, the NBA Finals is probably going to come to a close, so I don't know if I'm going to try to get in on that action or not. But there's always odds on just about everything. The Olympics is coming up. That'll be some interesting props and odds and things like that you can bet on. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like on Bet Online. Of course, there's always the online casino as well. I'm loving it. They have all the latest odds, news, and information for all your online sports betting needs. So, Craig, visit the website today. We're using mobile device to join, receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. So before that next tip-off, face-off, or pitch, head over to Bet Online and start playing today. That's Bet Online, your online sportsbook experts. Blah, I can't talk today. So we got a great show lined up for you. As you can see on the bottom ticker, we're going to be talking about some coaches. So we're going to kick it old school with our former show, Coaching Chatter. So we're going to talk about some coaches. We're going to talk about some that may be on the hot seat, which is probably not very many in the Eastern Division. Because of the second topic, there is a lot of new coaches coming in. So we will discuss them, break them down, and talk about what expectations are for them. And then we're going to do a preseason All-East team. We're going to just talk about some standout players within the Eastern Division, guys that we think that can come in and make a difference on both sides of the ball. We probably won't give you a full team, but we'll give you some standouts that we really like and that we can really talk about with that. So, Craig, coaches on the hot seat. If you ask any Georgia fan, Kirby Smart's on the hot seat. I don't buy it. What do you think?
I don't either. I think, he's not that far away from having been, 2017. They were in a national championship game. I'm sorry. I don't subscribe to that he's on the hot seat. Now, they lay an egg this year. Let's say they go 500. And there's going to definitely be some rumbling there. There's no doubt.
There will be.
And it'll be the same sort of thing with Mark Richt. He never could. He had some really good years with them. They were very good under him, but he never could take them to that next step.
Right.
And I think let's say, Kirby, let's say they finish second to Florida in these, and the fact that they're a prohibitive favorite to win these, say that they finish second, then I think you hear some rumblings. Right now, I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And I think it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, if we did a Kentucky preview with Vinny Hardy on the Georgia Dog Show last week, Israel and I, and I just think it's ridiculous that for him to be on the hot seat, I think it would take something drastic like going 500 or even missing a bowl game for that matter to be able to say or talk about this hot seat nonsense. So, um, look at the other two coaches. I mean, I think Dan Mullen's in an interesting spot here because, I know his defensive coordinator's seat is red hot. But Mullen, I think part of me thinks he's really safe, and it doesn't matter what kind of year he has unless he goes out and goes like 2-10 for some reason. But I think with their schedule, that's laid out the way it's laid out for them, they could potentially lose 4 of the last 6 games. Not a great way to end the season, especially if one of those losses comes at the hands of Florida State, who is, I never thought I'd say that they're rebuilding. This is probably the worst FSU's been since like the mid 70s. But, I think when you're looking at hot seat, I have to think that Dan Mullen, Florida fans are kind of growing tired of his antics. I think, I'm not really tapped into the Florida community that well. Maybe if you're following us, you can let me know and set me straight. But I think that if Dan Mullen has a season like an 8-4, Craig, he may be on the hot seat. He may be looking to get out anyway. What do you think on Dan Mullen?
Well, Corey, when we talked earlier, and one of the subjects you told us we were going to do the coaches on the hot seat. He was the one I came up. He was the man for me. I think he's more on the hot seat than any other coach in the East. Now you got 3 brand new coaches in there. They're not going to be in the hot seat yet unless something they go over.
Unless something non-football related
right.
happens, like
that's exactly right. Off the field, something happens there. They're not going anywhere. Stoops, I think is fine. He's done a very good job at Kentucky, and then Drinkwitz. I mean, this is his second year, and I thought he did a really good job last year. Mm-hmm. So that gets me to Kirby and Mullen, and I'm thinking Mullen more than anybody. They were 8-4 last year, and the fact
disastrous
that
finish.
Exactly, and like I said, the last thing you remember is, and I understand they had a lot of players that opted out and didn't play, but still, just you getting just pummeled by Oklahoma. That leaves a sour taste in a lot of Gators fans' mouths, and so I think he's the guy. He's on the hot seat.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I agree with you. I think it's they've got to do something because it's not a great deal to get. I mean, nobody ever gets seal clubbed in a bowl game by Oklahoma. Oklahoma is usually one that's getting blown out in a bowl game because for whatever reason they get blown out. That's just how they roll in Oklahoma. But I think Dan Mullen's got too much talent down there at Florida to underachieve. I mean, you go 8-4 with that bunch. That's that's an accomplishment to finish out the season the way they finished. I mean, losing to Bama, that was a historically good Bama team, so I don't hold that one against him. But the embarrassing fashion in which you lose to LSU with the shoegate, and then the embarrassing fashion in which you lose to Oklahoma, it doesn't sit well with me. Those 2 games alone would say, okay, what's this guy doing? And the fact that he gave hints that he really wanted the New York Jets job, maybe he's not all bought in. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I think it's interesting. I mean, I think more of this hot seat talk might be for coaches in the West, like, maybe tomorrow night when you're listening to Best of the West, maybe they'll talk about Jimbo or some of those Western guys that might be on the hot seat. Is Nick Saban on the hot seat? No, just kidding. He's definitely not on the hot seat. But yeah, I think you just got to look at it like, all the guys are new. So let's jump right into these new guys, and we can start with sophomore incumbent Eli Drinkwitz, because I think his first season was, I mean, about as difficult as you can get. Him and Sam Pittman and Lane Kiffin, some of the new guys that came in. Come into a 10-game All SEC schedule. I think you just got to wipe that from the record and just say, okay, this is a fresh start for you, playing an actual schedule with an actual off-season cycle. So I'm gonna put Drinkwitz as kind of like a rookie plus, right? Because it's hard to judge him from last year, but he did really well. So I'll give him credit. He did really well considering all the circumstances. you kick off the year with Bama as your first game in the SEC as a head coach. That's not easy, but I think Drinkwitz has a lot of stuff in his favor. I think he's got a defense that can only go up. So I'm thinking, second, third in the East. He's pushing Georgia for that Eastern Division title. I mean, I think that's the expectation for Drinkwitz. What do you think?
Well, I like I said, I agree with you. I thought considering he did a really good job. I liked him anyway with what all he did at Appy State. I thought that was a terrific hire. He's going to have to recruit better in order to get some players. I don't think he is anywhere near, I guess, talent-wise, a Florida and a Georgia. And to be quite honest, I don't think he's, if Tennessee is back up where they're supposed to be, they don't have the cloud over them. Let's say they have a pretty decent season. Heupel's going to be able to recruit really well, so you're going to fall back behind them also. And let's face it, the South Carolina area, they get into Georgia. They produce some very good talent in that area, and then Stoops has proven he's gone into Ohio and really he's plucked some really good players, and he's got a couple of kids here from Middle Tennessee that's committed to him in the this coming fall. Not this coming fall, but the next fall. So he's done a really good job of recruiting there also. So I think he's got to step it up a little bit. Missouri's not known as a fertile recruiting ground, and let's face it, it's pretty tough. All the states around there, it's pretty tough going for him to out recruit those other schools around him.
Yeah, because you dip into Texas. Everybody and their brother is in Texas trying to recruit, and within the conference, you got LSU sitting right there, Arkansas. You got the two Mississippi schools. You got A&M right there in the state of Texas. You got all the schools either they go to Georgia, they go to Florida, they go to Texas, and they dip into the Carolinas as well to get all the talent. So Missouri's going to have to find a way to figure out, hey, can we go to the Midwest and steal some Big Ten kids away and maybe because skill guys are skill guys, fast guys are fast guys. Doesn't matter where you are. They're gonna have to figure out a way to do something and find a niche for themselves because they're gonna get out recruited, and then eventually that's gonna cycle back, and like Tennessee recruiting well, that's going to put them back up in that upper echelon. That's why I kind of think that they've got the biggest trajectory is for the recruiting purpose. So you're exactly right. He's got to recruit, but he can develop. He knows what it's like to recruit to a small town. He did it at Appalachian State. He knows he's got himself a quarterback. He's got some marketability there. With this NIL stuff, I think that's going to affect recruiting a lot. So you got the St. Louis market right there that can help you. You've got a good network of boosters and businesses that support Mizzou. So, I think there's a lot of promise there. Potential promise. You just got to figure out a way to tap into it. You got to figure out a way to get into Southern Illinois. You got to lock down your state, obviously, and get the few guys in your state that's really good. You've got to be able to dip into Oklahoma, the Tulsa area. The big city pockets in Oklahoma are actually really good football. You got to be able to dip into northern Texas. You've got to be able to steal some guys from the deep South and the Carolinas, and then, of course, go east into the Mid-American region, or whatever they call that, Mid-Atlantic, I guess. Virginia, Maryland, Delaware area. So you got to be able to you got to just get creative with your recruiting. I think he's got the development part down pat. They had a really good season. They got better each and every week. So I'm not necessarily worried about that. So I think Drinkwitz has got a high ceiling. He's just got to realize that he's got a high ceiling, and he's got to keep getting better in recruiting. We talked about Tennessee. They welcome in Josh Heupel. I said it on SC After Dark. I said it last week right here on Beast. I really like his style of play. I really like what he's been able to do at UCF. And people are going to be like, oh, well, he just inherited Scott Frost's players. What do you think about that? I mean, what are you hearing? I know you're more tapped into Tennessee than I am, but what are you hearing on Josh Heupel? I know he talked at that coaches clinic. He sounded really like clean, precise, had a really good, clear driven uh, presentation, was absolutely awesome. So for that, I think that won him some points with the coaches here in the state of Tennessee. I like him. You'll have a hard time convincing me otherwise.
No, I agree with you. I was happy with the hire also, and you know he's not playing with a full deck, Corey. The fact that he came in as late as he did, and that kills you with this senior class in the
Mm-hmm.
state of Tennessee, and it's shown so far with a lot of kids leaving the state. Have committed to leave the state, and it's going to be interesting to see um, what the sanctions are going to be. Obviously, that hurts also. I mean, every coach in America that's recruiting against Tennessee, that's coming out of their mouths.
Yeah.
That's just part of it because they don't know at this point, and uh, I'm sure a few people do, but it's not been known exactly yet. You don't know what the penalties are going to be, et cetera, et cetera. But I think, considering, I think he's done a pretty good job in the recruiting. They recently got the Miller kid, a wide receiver out of Memphis, is a four-star kid.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, looks like they may get offensive lineman Addison Nichols out of Georgia, who's also a four-star guy, a good ball player, had Tennessee ties with his family. So, he's going to take his hits because, like I said, he got into it late, and he also you got the specter of the NCAA violations. What'll be interesting to see is the junior class, the sophomore and junior classes in the state of Tennessee, to see how well he does recruiting those in the next few years. That'll be the telltale sign for him because obviously they all say it, and he said it as you know during his coaches the little Zoom we had, and he was speaking. He wants to get all the Tennessee talent he can get, and that's easier said than done. Uh, once the dam breaks, and you've got a lot of kids going out of state that probably normally would probably consider Tennessee more and may have gone to Tennessee, but that's just the
Yeah,
facts of life. And
it
also,
is.
I think this is another thing too, Corey, and you know this too. Nashville, Middle Tennessee is one of the fastest growing areas in the country. And
Yeah.
there are people moving in from all over the place.
I heard this.
But
I heard a
now,
crazy stat, like 75 people a day or something like that. It's
yeah, I mean,
crazy.
it's crazy. And people like me who grew up as a Tennessee fan, those are few and far between now because there's such an influx of new people, and they may be moving in from California and they have no allegiance to the University of Tennessee. So that's another thing you got to look at too is plus Tennessee, let's face it, they haven't had much success on the football field uh, in the last 15 years, to be quite honest. And so, you know, that all leads to the fact that you just don't have that fan base of younger kids now that you can rely on and say, okay, when you go into the state of Tennessee, you're already second because you're behind Tennessee. That's not the case anymore.
Right. Right. So yeah, I'm crazy. I don't know. I don't know what Tennessee's got to do. That they've got their work cut out for them because Vandy, I don't think is going to go down without a fight. So um, and I'm looking forward to kind of seeing what they can bring to the table. But I think Josh Heupel is the right guy. I was telling a friend of mine this. I think he is the right guy, and I think he's going to be the one. I think that gets the corner turned. I don't know if he. I don't know if he makes the turn or if he gets him to the next level, but I do think he's somebody that that can get him on the cusp and maybe set it up for somebody else.
No, like I said, a lot of people didn't like the hire, and let's face it.
Who were you going to hire at that point, though?
Well, that's what I was about to say. What do you have to offer now, as far as the program goes? You knew all these coaches obviously knew it broke that they were going to be on, all the trouble with Pruitt and why he was let go, and NCAA was in the middle of it. You hold a press conference and the president is coming out and saying all these things that happened. Who would want the job? To be quite honest with you, Corey, I mean,
I don't know. I mean, you're about to get hit in the face.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. I mean, if Tennessee came and asked me, I would take it. But I mean, they were about ready to go ask a high school MNPS assistant to be their head coach. I mean, that's kind of where they were. I think Kurt Page, our former co-host, who's now he's now going to be the next Bobby Cox down there in Springwood.
yes.
He probably would have taken it, but I mean, not many people with the pedigree was going to touch that job. I mean, there's a reason they probably behind the scenes. I don't even want to know how many times they got denied. First of all,
Well, exactly, and let's say you're going after some big guys. Let's say, well, why would they leave their job to go to Tennessee? That makes no sense. That's
No.
career suicide. That's what that is.
It's almost like you're jumping out of the fire and into the frying pan.
It makes no sense. You're just not going to get a marquee coach to come to University of Tennessee at this time. It's just not going to happen. And let's face it, the lack of success on the field, you can blame coaches, but there's other things involved too, not a, series of poor hires at athletic director, the list goes on and on.
Absolutely. So who knows? This Tennessee thing is it's taken so many twists and turns, but the fact that they haven't been able to hire a good coach since Fulmer left is kind of laughable. I think they thought they were getting that in Butch Jones. Maybe he had some success in Cincinnati, but there was just something about him. He just didn't fit. Obviously the Dooley experiment wasn't. That was terrible. Lane Kiffin, 7-6, all that promise, but Lane was very immature at that point. So, just think if this Lane Kiffin would have taken that job, we'd probably be saying something totally different. But he didn't really know his rear end from his elbows at that point. So who knows what could have been there. But
and I can't say, a lot of people were upset, obviously, at the fact that he left, but you're leaving to take your dream job. That's what he said. That is my dream job. I mean, how can you blame him?
You can't. You can't. You can't at all. You just got to say, I mean, that's just how I hate to be cheesy, but it's kind of how the cookie crumbles, right?
Yeah.
So who knows? Who knows what's going on there? But nonetheless, I think Heupel has the highest ceiling of all the new coaches in the East. I think that judging it on this season might be a little tricky. You're looking at Beamer, Clark Lee, and Josh Heupel. And did I say Shane Beamer? I did say
yes.
Shane. So you're looking at those three guys. Those are the new coaches, and Drinkwitz is sort of a new coach, not really. He got kind of some battle tested there, so it's going to, that's the 3-team race that, I never thought I would say, I never thought I'd be excited to see how the bottom half of the SEC East shapes out, but this one's going to be interesting as far as not necessarily this year, obviously, but for the trajectory of the conference or of the division within the SEC. That's where it gets interesting because, you have Josh Heupel at Tennessee, which they have all the resources, they have all the tradition. He has a lot of things on his side. He's got a quarterback that I feel really good about in Harrison Bailey. Also Hendon Hooker, if he wants that. Hooker's got some experience, mobility things, but I really like Harrison Bailey. I'm a big fan of Harrison Bailey's. I think he got screwed last year by Pruitt. I think that he should have been playing a lot more. Garantano's a turnover machine. So that's neither here nor there. But I do think that Heupel does have the quarterback piece. I do think that's important for what he does in his style of play, and I think his style of play will actually he may not come out ahead in a lot of ball games, but he's going to be very, very, very tough to beat, even with the limited roster.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you got to be exciting. And I think this offense that he's going to bring is going to be high powered. They're going to run up and down the field. And that's what's going to happen. If you're going to lose games, at least look good losing.
Exactly. Put up the points, show some promise. I mean, I think it's, you got to put it together for recruiting. You got to put a product out there. And if kids see an exciting product, there's some kids that might had Tennessee in their top 3 and said, okay, I want to go to Oklahoma, or I want to go to, Memphis. I want to go to Ole Miss. I want to go, they might change their mind because, hey, I can go here and really, really shine. I really like Harrison or whoever their starting quarterback is. I really like what they're doing there. I can see myself with an opportunity to come in and play really early. Like if I'm Isaiah Horton, I'm looking at this season really close, right? I'm looking at the season really close. I think it's not over with him. He could possibly end up at Tennessee if they have the right kind of season. So that's how I feel on Heupel. I think he can finish 5th in the East. I think he can finish above. I think he will finish above South Carolina and Vandy. I know that sounds really harsh, but for where they are and what they were, if I'd have told Tennessee fans that Tennessee was going to finish 5th in the East after everything that's happened this year to them, you would say, A, I'm crazy, and B, thank you for having some confidence in us. But I just think they made the right hire. I think that you're going to see that. I think you're going to see that. This guy has charisma. This guy has buy-in. This guy doesn't have a ton of slappies. He just doesn't have a lot of depth. He has some good starters. He just doesn't have a lot of depth at all. His depth is gone.
I think it helps him. It helps him too that Tennessee's in the East, because if Tennessee was in the West, I'd pick them dead last.
Yeah, I would too. Absolutely. But they're in the East, so they're not going to finish dead last. No. I think South Carolina is going to finish dead last.
Interesting.
Because you can't waltz in here with Kevin Harris as your only piece, right? I think Vanderbilt's going to be better defensively than South Carolina. That's going to be the difference for me, right? And it may be like Vanderbilt. That's the only game Vanderbilt wins, and South Carolina goes 0 in the conference. It might be one of those scenarios, right? Like I'm not picking Vanderbilt to finish like 2nd in the East or anything. I'm just picking them ahead of South Carolina this year. That's been a tough hurdle for Vanderbilt, but I do think with Clark Lee, and we'll get to him more in depth in a second, I do think that he can do some things and find an identity for Vandy, and they got Ken Seals. I like the quarterback situation at Vandy more than I do at South Carolina. I think it's a better fit. But Shane Beamer, and he spoke at media days today. Actually, I don't know if you caught any of that, but he had the worst class in the SEC, 80th overall recruiting wise. So it's not like he recruited all that well. He's been active in the transfer portal, but I think that they have no playmakers. You shut down the run game, they have no playmakers. And I don't know how you can win without a single playmaker. And I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Talk me out of it, but I think that Shane Beamer, A, lack of experience. I think he's going to have a rough year. And then B, lack of playmakers. The not being able to recruit very well after getting hired. I mean, you got hired pretty quick. I think, somebody's got to finish last, I guess, in the SEC. But, to finish below Vandy in recruiting, it's kind of concerning to me. You're already being out recruited by the team that your measuring stick is. So I don't really know how to feel on Shane Beamer. I wasn't really fired up about the hire. I think maybe eventually he'll be good. He may surprise me. I don't know, but they'll play tough. They'll play hard for him. They just don't have any talent. They're very like even like a lot of like I think Tennessee has better starters than they do, but Tennessee nor South Carolina has any depth, and South Carolina doesn't have the starters to go with it. Do you? It sounded like you disagreed on that. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to slightly disagree. I'm going to give South Carolina just a little, just a this much more than Vanderbilt. And I'm picking Vanderbilt last and South Carolina above them. But I think both those teams are not very good. I just think all the things that happened during Vanderbilt's season with having to cancel games and everything that went all involved and everything, I just thought that was probably one of the worst Vanderbilt teams I've seen in probably 30 years.
Yeah.
I just don't think you recover that quickly from that. I love the hire of Clark Lee. I think it's a great hire. But you are what you are, and they didn't have any talent last year. They had no running game. I like Seals. I think he could possibly be a good quarterback, but he has no weapons around him. You talk about that, Corey, and man, he was on his
Yeah.
backside a lot last year.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think it was yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's just I guess we're like splitting hairs when it comes
Yeah, like I
to
said,
doing that,
there's
but
not much difference for me. I agree with you.
no.
I just think South Carolina
And that
overall has a little bit better talent, but not by much.
and I think it comes down. I think when you're splitting hairs like this, I think it comes down to the quarterback position, which obviously, you know, there's 11 guys out there, but it's basically Kevin Harris, and then Ken Seals. Like I don't know, like I like Ken Seals better, and I think that's gonna make a difference to me, and I think that Clark Lee is going to have that defense ready to go. I think South Carolina is going to have a hard time scoring points. I think Vanderbilt's going to have a slightly less harder time scoring points. And I think that you put those two things together, South Carolina is going to lose like a 17-13 game against Vandy, and that's going to be the difference in the season. So that's kind of where I stand on that. Clark Lee, I think is, I really like what he's doing. I really like kind of the things that he's bringing to the table. I think that they need some discipline there in Vandy. I think they need somebody, that's kind of like that James Franklin mold where he comes in, he gets stuff done, right? He comes in, gets stuff done, brings an identity, brings a certain level of toughness. I mean, you look at those Notre Dame defenses, they were pretty daggum good, except against Alabama, which, I mean, it's hard to be good
No,
against Alabama last year. But
yeah, exactly.
so I don't hold that against them at all. I just don't see that with South Carolina. I just don't see that with Shane Beamer. Maybe I just can't see that. Maybe he'll show me. I don't know. If he does well in recruiting, maybe that'll change. Long term, I don't know. Long term, they're both kind of the same. But short term, I think Vanderbilt's going to have a more successful season, however that looks, than South Carolina. But long term, that remains to be seen. We will definitely come back to this for sure. I'm not sure when Clark Lee is speaking at media days. Shane Beamer definitely.
I think it's Wednesday. I think it's
Wednesday.
Uh-huh.
Okay, yeah. Beamer spoke today. He spent most of the time, making a recruiting pitch to Oscar Delp, the tight end, which he needs. He's going to. I mean, he really, really, really is going to use the tight end. Like he's really making it a point for the tight end to be the main playmaker of the offense. Like I don't know, like something about it just something about Shane Beamer to me. And we may talk about this on SC After Dark when I'm drinking my Sammy Adams or whatever beers I have left over in the fridge. But I just don't know. I really, really do not know. So that being said, that's how I rank them. And I can see what you're saying. I just don't agree. I think Clark Lee is. I think Clark Lee has a better pedigree than, well, not a better pedigree, but I think Clark Lee is a better coach right now than Shane Beamer. Whether that's true in 5 years, who knows? Shane Beamer could be Hall of Fame. You know, we could be talking about South Carolina winning a national championship in 5 years. Who knows? But as of right now, neither team are going to do it, and I think Vanderbilt's going to be like maybe 3-9, and South Carolina might be 2-10. Who knows? They're both bad. So, anyway, all right. Let's talk about some standout players. Okay. When you talk about standout players, you think of quarterbacks, right? That's the first thing you think of, quarterbacks. Everybody does. You know, it's a habit, right? So when you look at quarterbacks, to me, it's JT, it's Connor Basilick, and then everybody else, right?
Absolutely.
Then any other quarterback is in the Western Division that they'll talk about on this next show.
I mean, you look at it past those two guys, and there is, question marks as to who's going to be the quarterback. Even though Ken Seals played a good bit last year, there's no guarantee that he's going to be the quarterback at Vanderbilt. And, you have the situation at Tennessee. You have the situation at South Carolina. You have the situation at Kentucky, And then you also have the situation at Florida. You got Emory Jones, but, the sample size is there. He has played some, but he's not been the focal point. So that's a different being when you are. It's on you. All eyes are on you every offensive play.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and I think when you look at that next list of quarterbacks, that's gonna be a deciding factor. I think these guys have got to be impact players within their ball clubs. I think if Florida's going to have any chance, Emory Jones cannot flop. Kentucky, that's going to be one to notice. I think listening to Vinny last week, he was talking about Will Levis, the Penn State transfer, being the guy, and so who knows? I kind of thought it was going to be Joey Gatewood personally, but he made a good point about Will Levis, and Will Levis knows the scheme better than any of those better than any other quarterback on the roster. So that's got to count for something. I think once Tennessee picks a starter, their guy could possibly jump up to third on the list. I think Harrison Bailey has the talent within this offense. He could jump up as a true playmaker. I think whoever starts at Tennessee is going to be my dark horse. As far as like quarterback play in the SEC East, because I think it's right now, because there's nobody else. I think it's Ken Seals as your third best. Luke Doty certainly isn't that. Emory Jones is better than Luke Doty, but certainly isn't that. I don't think that could change. I don't know that Kentucky. I don't know that their guy can really jump up there, but I think Harrison Bailey, to me, or Hendon Hooker, has a chance to push into that top three, maybe even top two.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there is a huge drop off after JT Daniels. It's a huge drop off, and I agree. Connor Bazelak is the next best guy in the East, and like I said, this is one of the reasons why I pick Missouri to finish third. Is for that reason right there. That's right. They have an experienced quarterback who I think is on an upward trajectory. I really liked what I saw from him as the year went on. He had some rough spots. I thought he played well against Tennessee, even though they got pummeled by Tennessee. But he just continued to get better, and I really liked what I saw from him. So I think he's a solid number two. Like I said, I'll give the notch to Emory Jones as number three just because he has some experience and he's going to have weapons around him at Florida. Then the rest of the guys, to me, I know Ken Seals had a lot of time playing, but like I said, he finished. He was on his backside so much last year. You got to wonder how much that's gotten into his head.
Yeah, I don't know. There's no telling. It's odd though, right?
Yeah, I mean it. Like I said, as I said about Tennessee, the East is so much more weak than the West. It is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I mean, I can sit here and say, you know what? Ole Miss would finish third for sure, possibly challenge Florida for second. If they were in
Right.
there. Mississippi State, I could possibly say the same thing about them. Obviously, we know about LSU. Obviously, we know about Alabama. Auburn's another one. I would say probably Auburn would also challenge for second place there. So, I mean, the talent level in the West is head and shoulders above the East. And it's a
Right.
cyclical thing. It's not always going to be that way. It's a cyclical
No.
thing.
And
I
it
can
won't be.
remember when it was just the opposite.
Right. Absolutely. I remember it was Tennessee, Florida, and then Georgia was sneaking up there in that third spot just about every year. And the West was like, flip a coin, right?
Yeah.
But like I said, it goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Right now, the East is down, the West is up, and that's all we need to know about that. But we are the beast of the East, so we're going to stick with it, right? Even through the hard times. So, um,
Still some good football in the East, though.
still some great
Don't get
football.
us wrong.
There will be some great football in the East. Um, so those are your quarterbacks. Obviously, I think it's Kevin Harris leading the way at the running back position, but then you got Zamir White, James Cook. I think will be some big playmakers there. Chris Rodriguez for Kentucky. As far as that goes, Cavassier Smoke definitely gets the award for coolest name in the conference. Any other running backs stand out to you within this division? I think
Those,
it's kind of a, I think it's kind of
yeah,
like a group of no namers.
yeah. Those were my three: Zamir White, Kevin Harris, and then also Chris Rodriguez. I would take Harris and White would be my first teamers on the all East team. After that, whoo, again, big drop off.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, who's it going to be? Vanderbilt, no running game.
No.
Missouri lost Roundtree. They're up in the air as a running game. Of course, Tennessee lost their best running back to Oklahoma and Eric Gray. So there are a lot, and then really look at Florida. There's no proven commodity there either.
I mean, you got Bernard Pierce, which I mean, and I said this on After Dark last week. They should be really good as a running team at the running back position, but the offense really doesn't feed the running backs like you think it would. Because I can't think of a stud running back that Dan Mullins had. Like a guy that like you would say, man, I'm glad he's gone. There's not one. Maybe LaMichael P. Ryan, but not really. Like he wasn't really a factor at Florida. He's had a better pro career, but he isn't really a factor. It's kind of like what Butch Jones did to Alvin Kamara. Like Alvin Kamara left, and you weren't really like broken up about it. And then he goes on to be one of the best in the entire NFL. And it's kind of that situation, right?
No, I agree with you. And I think he's going to have a quarterback in Emory Jones. You say what we will about it. It's going to be more like a Tim Tebow, a Dak Prescott that he had
Mm-hmm.
at Mississippi State. He's going to be that type of quarterback, which is in that offense, which is the ideal quarterback for him. And like I said, Emory Jones is going to get a lot of carries. He's going to be running the ball quite a bit, and he's going to be probably really the bell cow, not only passing the ball, obviously, but also running the ball. And I think he's going to lean on him heavily
Mm-hmm.
for that reason. I just don't, like I said, the running back position at Florida doesn't excite me at all. I just don't see game breakers and guys you have to scheme for from the past. They
Right.
are not there.
Right. So let's look at the wide receivers now. This is a tricky position because, again, I feel like there's not like that surefire name towards ACL in the spring, George Pickens.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is another list of like overachievers, but nobody really like you're looking at going, okay, that guy's going to play on Sundays and that guy's going to be drafted in the first round. Like I don't really see that right now. I mean, maybe there's some guys that could develop, but like you think about Cam Johnson at Vanderbilt, like what can he do? I think he's somebody, I think he's somebody that could finally get in the mix and make a difference. I think Jermaine Burton at Georgia is also somebody that needs to be able to get in the mix. Josh Ali potentially at Kentucky. He's going to have to be somebody, and they got a transfer the other day that I think is pretty exciting. Anybody at Tennessee that you think is fits that bill?
Well, possibly, the fact that they're going to be tossing the ball around a good bit, Corey.
It'll be somebody.
Yeah, it's going to be somebody. And probably if I had to stick my finger on somebody, it might be Velus Jones, the USC transfer who came on late for Tennessee and played pretty well towards the end of the year. So if I had to pinpoint somebody, it would be him. I think you got to look also in Missouri and Kiki Chisholm, who led them in receiving last year.
I really like the way he plays.
Yeah, so he's a possibility also. But again, you're right. There's not a guy that you're going, this guy is a definite.
I mean, is it bad as far as the conference or the division goes that your number one receiver might be a tight end that's listed as a wide receiver and Eric Gilbert? I mean, that's where we're at right now.
Yeah.
I just think this is a league that doesn't have a lot of, not a league because the West has a ton of star power. I mean, you look at the preseason all conference with all the publications, it's all freaking Western Division people.
It is.
Right?
You're right.
I think when you look at the Gators, Jacob Copeland is somebody that has potential, but doesn't really stand out to me. Xavier Henderson taking over for Kyle Pitts. He's okay. So looking at tight ends, obviously Xavier Henderson for Florida, somebody that could potentially, he's intriguing. You look at Darnell Washington at Georgia, Eric Gilbert, I guess. You look at that. Tanner Muse at South Carolina, somebody that could really help that offense go if Shane Beamer wants to throw that recruiting pitch at Oscar Delp. I think that Tanner Muse has got to have a great season for the Gamecocks if he wants that to happen. But as far as tight ends goes, that's about it to me, right?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. That's about it. Nobody else stood out for me as far as potential all East tight end. You have named them all, and the two best right now, if you ask me, will be for the Bull. Will be in Garnet and what? Excuse me. What are the official colors of Georgia?
Red and black.
Oh, okay. I thought it was something fancy. Just red and
black.
black.
Just red and black.
Red, black, silver.
The silver breeches.
Yes.
That's not really an official
color. I was going to say red and black, but I thought it was something else.
Yeah. Okay. No. Just
right. Yeah. They'll be in the red and black. I really like Gilbert a lot. I think he has a lot to bring to the table, and like versatile. Like I said earlier, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't have him split out wide and run him outside some, with him and Washington in the game at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're definitely going to, because he's going to be listed as an X receiver. So they're going to have, it's not technically they're not going to have two tight ends on the field. Technically, it's going to be still 11 personnel, but we all know the real facts. It's going to be 12 personnel. Let's just be honest about it. But that's how they got him, right? They said, "Hey, you're going to be a receiver, not a tight end." So they said,
Right.
"Okay." He said, "Okay, I'm going to Georgia." He didn't like he didn't like it at Florida.
Apparently not. He
You
didn't
know,
stay very long, did
didn't
he?
like it. Didn't like it at Florida. That's got to tell you something too. Okay, so rapid fire. Since there's not a whole lot of star power, we could go unit by unit, but that would get kind of boring. So offensive linemen, I think that when you look at obviously Cade Mays, Jamari Sawyer are the two that really stand out to me. There's not really anybody that jumps off the page at me. I think Georgia has the best unit overall. Then you got to look at Kentucky. They returned 3 starters. They're looking pretty good as an offensive line.
Kennard's really good.
Yeah. Devin Kennard, I think is his name, right?
Darren, yeah.
Darren Kennard.
Mm-hmm.
We have a De'Arion Kennard at Hillwood, so that always gets me confused. Look at on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, the defensive lineman that really stands out the most is Jordan Davis at UGA. Any other defensive linemen stand out to you?
I like the USC Kingsley Enagbare is another a good ball player, good defensive lineman, and another guy that I really like too on the defensive line is Zachary Carter with Florida. I think he's a really good run stopper. He creates havoc. He's in the backfield a lot. Led the interior. I think he led them in sacks, as a matter of fact. So he can stop the run, rush the passer equally as well.
Good. Linebackers. I think there's a ton of linebacker talent. I think obviously Henry 2020 would be the top of that list. However, he's in the Western Division now. You got to think Adam Anderson, Nakobe Dean, those guys at Georgia. Florida has Brenton Cox. There's quite a bit of linebacker depth in this division. Who else stands out to you?
I also like Ventrell Miller for Florida. I think he's really good football player, and a guy you didn't mention that I love for Georgia is Nolan Smith. I just really think he's going to have a monster year. He is super talented. Really after that, well, Anthony Orjai is a good ball player also. He led them in tackles last year and is coming back. And he will be the top defensive player for Vanderbilt. So, after that, who knows?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag, right? And then obviously your DBs. Some guy named Alontae Taylor. He's actually representing Tennessee at media days. You got to think of some of the transfers. This is going to be a transfer heavy position. When you look at the DBs, obviously with Tyke Smith, Darion Kendrick coming in at Georgia, those are two names that I think will be absolutely outstanding as far as that goes. You add them to Keely Ringo and Jalen Kimber, I think you have a pretty good set of defensive backs. You look at Florida, who has my man
Kyer Miller.
There you go. Yeah, Kyer Elam. Yeah. You look at
who to me is the top, definitely the top DB in the East.
Absolutely, and then you think of Enos Rakestraw over at Missouri, Akib Evans, Ali Green, some guys that are transferring into Missouri. Those guys could play a role in that defense. I really like some other guys too. This is another. I mean, again, this is kind of the theme of what this division is. It's going to be a lot of guys that have a lot of promise, but we just don't know who the heck they are right now.
No, you're right, and I think in the end, you're going to have a guy, one of these transfers, and more than likely it's going to be in the defensive backfield because, as you said, there was a lot of turnover there, a lot of new faces coming into the East, for example, on the transfer portal, and I wouldn't be surprised if one of those guys didn't have a standout year.
Yeah, like Marcellus Dial at South Carolina. I think he's somebody in the defensive backfield that could be really good. They got a lot of defensive transfers, so again, you never know how those are going to pan out. So it's hard to for me, when you just even look at it as a team as a whole, it's hard to really project that. So I don't know. Before we wrap up, Craig, anything else you're looking forward to in this league? Is there any names that we left off? Some preseason recognition. Who's going to be coach of the year in this division? Clark Lee.
I'm going to jump out and put my orange Homer hat on and say Josh Heupel.
Mm-hmm. Josh Heupel goes 6-6. He better be coach of the year with that roster.
Yeah.
I can dig that. I think they'll go the safe route and give it to Kirby Smart, but I think there'll be somebody that's more deserving, like an Eli Drinkwitz for finishing second in the East, or like a Josh Heupel for taking that roster and actually doing something with it. And if Shane Beamer finishes fifth, I think he should be coach of the year. I think if any one of those three new guys does anything with their rosters, they should be coach of the year. To me. I think offensive player of the year is going to be JT Daniels. Defensive player of the year could be Alontae Taylor. Could be Jordan Davis. Depends on, I think Alontae is going to get a lot of work, a lot of opportunities. I think he'll capitalize. To me, he's the Eastern Division player of the year as far as that goes.
Well, I kind of like one guy that I think has the potential to be the defensive player of the year in the East is Jordan Davis.
Yes,
I think
that was my other name. Yeah, he's going to be.
He definitely could. It to me is the leading candidate of all the guys we've mentioned to be a possible defensive player of the year in the East.
Absolutely. Well, as SEC Media Days presses on, we will have more coverage for you. Check us out on SEC After Dark. We'll probably have more full coverage of what's happening and the storylines coming out of Media Days. But certainly when we see you back here next week, we will definitely dive into post Media Day madness, things like that, takeaways, things that we're excited about from the talking season, things that we're like, oh no. From the talking season, things like that. So we'll continue on. We may have a guest next week. We might try to work that out and try to get some more extensive previewing going on this show. But as we press forward, I just want to remind you what we are. We don't just cover football. This is also basketball, which thanks to the Milwaukee Bucks and Phoenix Suns series, I'm kind of getting back into basketball a little bit. And then we'll cover some baseball as well. I think it was an exciting finish in the College World Series. You had an all SEC final, which I know people are tired of. I know people are tired of seeing the SEC. I'm not, and I don't think you are either. And if you're watching the show, you're probably not either. So we're going to get some sponsors. Again, we are presented by betonline.ag. So, Craig, do you want to prime everybody's week with anything? You got the last word.
I'll be interested, to see really the heavy hitters are starting to come up later on this week at SEC Media Days. I'll be interested to see what their predictions are going to be, and then also their all SEC team.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at some of these all SEC teams, and it's all like Alabama, Mississippi State, Auburn, Georgia, South Carolina, Alabama, Texas A&M, Alabama. It's all Western Division people. So,
I'll be interested to see how close Georgia is to Alabama when it comes to who the SEC champion is going to be. I'll be interested to see how close it's going to be.
Well, until Bama loses, people are going to be picking Bama, and I don't blame them. So, yeah, that's where I stand on that. I think this is the year Georgia gets them. If Bama can get through Texas A&M, Auburn, Ole Miss, if they can get through those teams, I think they'll be, I think Georgia will get them. But they got to beat A&M. They got to beat Ole Miss. something that Saban hasn't had a whole lot of luck against Ole Miss, but should have lost that game last year. I'll say that.
And LSU too.
Yeah, LSU. They got to get through LSU. LSU's we talked to Brad Johnson. His son's going to be a dude now.
Oh yeah,
he's going to be a dude. So I'm looking forward to seeing that transformation over there. I know Ole Miss fans watching the show are probably like, no, LSU, get away. But no, that's just the truth, man. It's the truth. Max Johnson is good. He's good at football. Ole Miss is good at football too, thankfully, for their sake. Matt Corral is going to be a really good quarterback, not to go into best of the West, but that's something that Jake Thomas, and you're going to have to help me out with the other co-host. I'm still learning, so don't hold it against me. Best of the West, I will get it the next time I talk to you. But that's going to wrap us up, Craig. We are the Beast of the East, man. We're presented by betonline.ag. We are on the Believe Podcast Network. Find us on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, or anywhere like that. You can find us right here on Willis Digital Media across all social media platforms. You can probably stream us live. You can find me at Coach Burton 36, as you see above. You can also follow my Believe in Georgia Dog show at Believe in Dogs on all social media platforms. So check us out there, me and Israel Troop. And you can follow Craig at D. Craig Ladd. And so catch us anywhere you catch us. Enjoy the rest of the week. You got Beast of the East on Monday nights, Best of the West on Tuesdays, SEC After Dark on Wednesdays. Then you have some other Ole Miss content, including the Palmcast, which is the number one draw on this channel every day at 10 a.m. Central Time, 11 a.m. Eastern. And everything's all good, man. Check us out. We're here, right, Craig?
Absolutely.
We're doing our thing, man. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun ride. I can't wait to embark on it. But this has been episode 3 of Beast of the East, presented by Bet Online. For Craig, I'm Corey. Thank you for watching. We'll see you back here next time. So long.